Well, welcome again to AI and Tech Innovation's Impact on Leadership webinar, presented by UCLA Anderson Professor Terry Kramer and hosted by the FEMBA and EMBA Fully Employed and Executive MBA admissions team. Today, we're going to be using the Q&A feature after Professor Kramer's discussion. So please focus your questions on his topics, and we will send a follow-up email following the event and with ways to connect with the admissions teams if you have any questions on the program, application, your candidacy, etc. But today, I would like to start off by introducing a few of the team members here today from admissions. We have Shannon Bell, our Executive Director, Christy Anoan, FEMBA Associate Director, myself, Debbie Quigley, and Vanessa Esquera, our Admissions and Operations Manager. And again, please look for the email post-event with ways to connect with us. And it's my honor today to introduce you to Professor Terry Kramer. Professor Kramer is the faculty director of the Easton Technology Management Center. The center is one of UCLA Anderson's 8 academic centers dedicated to fostering innovation and leadership in technology. Professor Kramer is a global mobile communications executive with 35 plus years experience at Vodafone Group and a variety of small growing technology companies. He's held roles in the U.S. Department of State, including the Obama administration. He participates often in speaking engagements at Harvard Business School, Wharton, Haas, and UCLA Anderson, and speaks about technology innovation and mobile industry development. He holds teaching and advisory roles at Harvard Business School and UCLA Anderson, and of course, he's an award-winning professor and faculty member. Welcome, Professor Kramer. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Excellent. Debbie, a big thank you. And let me just welcome all of you as well. I was mentioning before we started the call that there's never been a greater impact on what we're doing at Anderson, what we're doing at the Easton Center than technology and specifically artificial intelligence, which has changed a lot of the world around us. And I think really raises a lot of the rationale for why an MBA, to really kind of understand and think about your leadership journey in this world. So I'm going to share a variety of slides. We'll go to the next slide here. And I want to cover 3 things specifically. First is I want to talk about what's going on with technology. What are the areas of innovation that we're seeing? What are the enablers that are allowing us to see these innovations now? And then get into what are the leadership imperatives. Because one of the important reasons to get an MBA and use it through your career is to be able to make sense of a lot of these issues. And again, think about what the leadership imperative is with technology. And then the final thing I'll cover is just how is technology impacting everything that we do at Anderson and everything that we do at the Easton Center. And I'll give you a flavor of some of the courses, the extracurricular activities that create a 360-degree experience. So we'll go to the next slide here. Every time I talk about technology, I always like to think about who are the 3 constituents that are most affected by technology. The first one are customers. Customers see the impact of technology based on the products and services that they experience. And we're going to talk about a variety of them, but one of the latest areas are AI agents that are creating independent, automated work in many areas that is changing the nature of work itself. Second constituency are enterprises. Enterprises that want to enter the digital world and digitize in a variety of ways, and those that face the threat of being disrupted. And again, this is another area that I feel is so critical and fundamental in what we do at Anderson to get people to really think about what are those digital transformation imperatives for companies. And then the final area is society. So technology in its best form will improve the quality and lower the cost of healthcare, of transportation, of education, of financial services itself. But then you'll also see a variety of techlash issues. These are areas of potential harm and concern, and the importance for leaders to think about how do you develop effective technology-based products, but minimize the harm that society can experience. So let's get into some of the specifics now. I always like to talk for any of you that are history majors. History is always an important item to think about where we've come from to have that context. If you go back to the 1980s, this is when I got my MBA. That was the beginning era of the PC. And I remember when I was at Harvard Business School, we had a PC portable. It weighed about 50 pounds, but it was considered a portable PC. And it was the beginning of personal automation, of word processing and Excel capabilities, etc. Fast forward to the mid 90s and early 2000s, and you have the internet explosion. All of a sudden, these PCs now are connected. And with that connection, they're now able to offer services like email and social media and e-commerce and what is today streaming solutions, etc. Then fast forward to the mid 2000s, and actually specifically 2007, you had the smartphone revolution. And that was the announcement of the iPhone. And the basic mindset that Steve Jobs and Apple had back then is anything that you can do in the home or office, you should be able to do on your smartphone. And that really enabled a lot of applications that we see to this day that create a fully mobile experience. And matter of fact, in a lot of the developing markets, you look at markets like India and China, many of those are smartphone first markets, that people's first interaction with the internet is via smartphone. Final area is where we are today. And I actually have to say, notwithstanding all the great areas of innovation that have played out, artificial intelligence to me is one of the most transformational ones. The ability to enhance, the ability to predict, the ability to make decisions, the ability to create content, the ability to interact, amazing capabilities that, as I mentioned, is really turbocharging the impact of technology. So next slide there. So I always like to summarize in one slide what is going on in the world today that explains why we're seeing the type of innovation that we're seeing. And let me just briefly go through it. The top left-hand side, you'll see technology. What is happening in technology? Now we have very high-speed mobile networks, fifth generation networks. These are networks that roughly get a gigabit a second. And in markets like the US and China, you're seeing 90, 95% population coverage of high-speed fifth generation networks. In India, we're seeing a $25 billion fifth generation network being built out by one of the major operators. We also have cloud computing. So these are companies like Amazon's AWS, Azure by Microsoft, Google Cloud. In China, it's Tencent Cloud, it's Alibaba Cloud. And these companies are allowing digitization to occur. They're allowing companies to access data, store that data, make sense of that data, etc. It is allowing users to access their own data on the go. You think about music services like Spotify and that ability to get whatever you want whenever you want it. Third area is Internet of Things. So these are smart connected devices. So smart connected devices can be wearable devices. It could be connected buildings. It could be connected vehicles. Today, there are over now 25 billion connected devices. And that number is expected to triple in the next 10 years or so. And actually, one of the biggest frontiers now is in healthcare, where literally our bodies will be connected to monitor wellness, to understand whether there's certain reactions to medications, to understand how somebody that's gone through major surgery is recovering or not. But that ability to have that connection on an opt-in basis is quite notable. And then the final area is artificial intelligence, which we're going to talk about in a lot more detail. But with all of this data that has been created and made available, the ability to analyze that to create new services is quite unique. Value propositions, top right-hand side. So I always think about this is how a customer sees technology. Are you offering them a lot of value or not? And what we're seeing is the use cases, the value propositions are quite significant related to technology. So the ability to do automation, the ability to save people time. I always love to give the example of autonomous vehicles and specifically robo-taxis, like you see today in Los Angeles with Waymo. When you think about the number of people that commute and how long they commute, a lot of kind of speculation. The average number in Los Angeles is about an hour and a half a day. And when you think of the number of hours and the time and the value of people's time, you have huge use cases related to autonomous vehicles and specifically robo-taxis. We're also seeing amazing improvements in diagnostic accuracy. And think about it in healthcare. The ability on an opt-in basis to know somebody's genetic background, their current vital signs, the medications they take, clinical research that's going on in a variety of areas, and to be able to diagnose cancer in early stages when it's much more treatable, to be able to diagnose dementia and Alzheimer early on. Amazing advances that are occurring, again, a lot of it due to data and the Internet of Things. If you go in the bottom left-hand box there, what you see are the business models. So I think about this as, can companies make money in technology? And what companies have done is really think about unique business models that go along with the technology. So if you start out with the shared economy, think about Uber and Lyft. That's a platform-based model that connects drivers and riders. And the unique model that they've developed is sharing assets. You have one car that is used 18, 20, 24 hours a day and sharing those costs across many users that drive down per unit costs. You have a variety of models that are advertising based, similar to what a lot of social networks use. You also have new subscription models, similar to ChatGPT, where if you want special capabilities, you're able to pay a subscription for that. You have a regular kind of battle between bundling and unbundling of services. So bundling, I always kind of, it dates me here thinking about cable TV and 250 channels. And I asked one of my former students who works at DirecTV, what's the average age of somebody that has a cable subscription? And she said about 63 years old. And I felt very old all of a sudden at that point. But that was a living example of bundling being something that added a lot of value. Well, now a lot of people want streaming solutions. They want to pick the type of streaming solutions that they want. This happens also in enterprise software. People want the best of breed software solutions as opposed to bundling. Using Zoom, even though we could use Teams here, we're using Zoom because we like the capability of Zoom. So there's a variety of models here that really explain why technology companies are able to create value for end users and also for themselves. The data flywheel and network effects is one of the most powerful. The more data that's collected on an opt-in basis from consumers creates better performance capability of the product. Think of Google search. As they see when people put in a keyword and see what they then click on, they're able to understand better what people meant when they said they want to buy a bicycle. That ability to collect more data then allows advertisers to say, I'm able to reach the customers that I want. Those funds allow companies to acquire more users and again, create better performance. So a lot of unique business models there. Now, notwithstanding the three boxes I just went through here, there are a lot of concerns about technology. There's concerns about data privacy. Are people aware of the data that's being used of theirs and why it matters that it be used? Antitrust issues. A lot of the tech companies are quite large, and it's because a lot of that increasing return to scale that I described. But is there misuse of that scale? That is a fundamental issue. I think one of the biggest issues is going to be the future of work. What's going to happen as jobs change in nature? And how do we retrain people in new arenas? And can we satisfy ourselves there's enough new jobs coming in that is offset by the jobs that could be lost due to automation? Digital divide, the whole ability, and we saw this during COVID, to make sure that people have access to digital devices, digital literacy, software applications, etc., so that all of the great benefits of technology are shared with a broad population. And then finally, misinformation and disinformation, the issues that the major social networks have been affected by. And how do you think about allowing for free speech, but not allowing speech that can be harmful to individuals, to communities, and to society? So these are the drivers. And by the way, as I'm going through this, I hope you're getting more excited, because this is what goes on at a business school. This is what goes on in my classes, is to really think through these issues, think about how they affect decision making, how you think about leadership, and how that allows you to advance on your leadership journey. Next slide there. So briefly on artificial intelligence, if I were to boil this down, there are two types of artificial intelligence. One is machine learning. Machine learning allows, in general, for companies and individuals that work at companies to make better decisions. It's allowing people to make predictions. So if you're able to look at data about a marketing campaign and understand what might work in the future, or to understand what type of content, TV shows, movies might work in the future, the ability to, if you're an airline, to understand if there's a weather disturbance and you know where the aircraft are located, to predict where you're going to have a problem in the route network. That's all machine learning. The latest form of artificial intelligence is generative AI. Generative AI being the names that ChatGPT is oriented around, Copilot is there, a variety of other companies that are in there, Anthropic, etc. The basic capability of generative AI is to create content and to be able to interact. That ability to create content can be music, it can be scripts, it can be legal briefs, it can even be class papers, although we put guardrails around what you can use it for at Anderson to make sure you've developed all the right learnings and skills. And it allows you to interact. So a lot of chatbots allow you to do this. Next slide. So if you're looking to get some extra, excuse me, reading, here are three books and readings that I think are excellent. First one is Competing in an Age of AI. This is the work of Marco Anciti, who's pictured there on the right. And this deals a lot with digital-first companies that are being created and digital-first individuals. I'll talk about a little bit more in the next couple of slides. Second piece of work has been done by McKinsey, and that is on the economic potential of generative AI. And what that is looking at is, where's generative AI going to be used by industry, and where's it going to be used by job function? Fascinating kind of commentary about what is going to change. The final piece on the right there is an interview of Kareem Lakhani, who wrote the book on the left there, by the managing editor of the Harvard Business Review. And this is where that whole idea that said AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace those without AI. It's a call to action to make sure we're learning about AI. What can it do? How can we use it in our own jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide. So on machine learning specifically, I always like to share this as one slide that I think is super important. And you look at the green bars here. What happens when we look at AI is there's three kind of buckets of how data is interpreted and analyzed. Number one is what happened in the past. If we look at healthcare, we could look at what happened to your blood pressure a day ago, a week ago, et cetera. Then you look at the middle bar and what is happening right now. What is my blood pressure? How many steps have I taken, et cetera. The third box on the far right-hand side is the Holy Grail. And that is saying where AI is today is the ability to predict in the future. So if I were to leave you with one thought about machine learning, it is all about today prediction, not just analyzing what happened in the past, not analyze what's done today, just that by itself, which are fine things to do, but the ability to predict. That ability to predict, is somebody going to have a health-related ailment? The ability for an autonomous vehicle to know that if it's driving down a street at 25 miles an hour and somebody all of a sudden walks across the street at 3 miles an hour, it needs to take an evasive maneuver. But it's all about prediction, is what machine learning is about. Next slide. Competing in an age of AI, which is the book that I shared with you earlier, is saying that there are brand new types of companies now that are created that are digital first. Think about companies like Google and Meta and Amazon. These companies are wired and structured around the collection of data, the analysis of data that then creates better products and services for all of us. Satya Nadella, he's the CEO of Microsoft, as you know, said AI is the new runtime of the firm. And as I mentioned, these AI first companies are all structured in a fairly centralized way to collect data and use it across boundary. Next slide. One of the interesting areas of kind of phenomenon that plays out by AI here is what you find in competing in an age of AI is there are increasing returns to scale. Meaning as the companies get more and more data, they're highly precise. They're able to make better recommendations than if they had lesser data. If it was in image recognition and radiology, it can more effectively understand what an image is saying. And that creates superior performance that allows these companies to do so well. Google search would be a great example of that. The other phenomenon that plays out with competing in an age of AI is what happens when a digital first company collides with a traditional company. So think about Amazon colliding with a traditional retailer. In almost every case, the digital company ends up winning because of the unique insights that digital companies have, because of their digital models where you're distributing some digital product where the cost of distribution approaches almost zero. That unique capability has allowed those companies to win. If that isn't enough, then what also happens is companies that win in one arena are often able to use that position, those insights, those customer relationships to move into other arenas, altogether different. So think about Google today. They're the owner of Waymo, and they're moving in now to robo-taxis. That ability to understand data and what they develop with Google Maps is a big enabler for capabilities in transportation. Think about Amazon. Amazon bought out One Medical Group. So Amazon shifting from an e-commerce company to being able to move into the healthcare space. So quite notable events. By the way, another kind of message here is we often think about competing in an AI and digital first companies. I also believe it can be digital first individuals, meaning they're individuals that use data to make their decisions. I think about my kids that are in their early 30s. They're highly data oriented. If you want to see an argument in the Kramer household, look at how decisions get made on what restaurant to go to. My wife will talk about some friend of hers that recommended a restaurant. Our kids go crazy listening to that. They said, how does our neighbor know anything about that restaurant? How do you know they went there on the right day? How do you know that what they ordered wasn't atypical in the restaurant, et cetera, et cetera? It's a fascinating kind of dimension around kind of data and good intuition and how they end up colliding. Next slide. So let me give you a few use cases here on AI itself, because I want to do a deep dive. And one of the big messages overall here is AI is literally affecting almost every sector in our economy. This is not kind of one or two sectors. And the rate of change that's happening here is quite profound. This is what makes AI so important to study. This is what makes it so important to make sure we know how to use it, et cetera. So what are some examples? Retail and e-commerce. We just had Gail Carpenter, who's the CFO of Amazon Store, so all of Amazon.com. And she talked about how they're using technology at Amazon. And she talked about the use of Rufus, which is a shopping assistant at Amazon. She talked about their shopping guides being digital guides now that help guide people in decision making. Same issue on inventory management, the ability to predict what is needed, quantity of what is needed at certain times of the year. Visual search. Many of you have probably used QR codes or done a visual search of a product and then been able to tap on that and get more information. Healthcare. I think healthcare is one of the most exciting areas. One of the cases I use in my technology management class as a kickoff is a case on Moderna. And Moderna is all about AI in drug discovery. I'll talk about it in a little bit more detail in a minute, but that ability to set up a platform where you're collecting data across all vaccines, all treatments that are developed to create better efficacy, better speed, lower cost, quite notable. Personalized treatment plans. ChatGPT just worked with a company called Color in the Bay Area that does cancer screening using data. And now what's happened is they said it's not enough to be able to diagnose somebody, but when you get to treatments, that ability to be highly personalized, knowing how somebody might react to certain medications or others, their overall well-being or not, to get much more precise. AI-driven diagnostics, there are early cases now of virtual physicians that are able to collect data and make a diagnosis. And in some early cases, humans preferring a virtual physician over an actual one. We'll get into more detail over time about what happens there, but just fascinating story. Next slide. So several other examples here in financial services, robo-advisors. So a robo-advisor being able to give you financial advice on asset allocation, make recommendations for what to invest in, etc. Marketing and advertising. You want to follow an interesting company, follow Salesforce. Salesforce is doing fascinating things with their sales cloud and marketing cloud that allows their end users to understand how to target certain users, how to generate draft campaigns, a marketing campaign with imagery, with words, etc. Still requires a human to be in the loop to really make it fit for purpose. But that ability to create unique capabilities in marketing and advertising are quite notable. YouTube is allowing now their content creators to use AI to create content. They have guidelines around it so people know when AI has been used or not. But again, some fascinating use cases. Manufacturing, so predictive maintenance for factory production equipment. That's another major use case that you see quite notably. Product design, prototyping. You even see this in fashion apparel. The ability to get ideas for what you may want to develop in the future and draft initial designs of apparel. It could be furniture. It can be digital twins for architectural use. Lots of capabilities there. Next slide. If you look at it, supply chain optimization, given it's such a complex area of knowing current inventory levels, availability of products, demand changes, seasonal changes, you see a lot of supply chain optimization using this. Education, we're in our second week of the spring term. Last week, my kickoff case in my technology and society class was Conmigo. Conmigo is part of the Khan Academy. It is a ChatGPT, an AI-based tutor that allows students to have a customized interaction with an AI-based tutor. And the big frontier here, similar to education, as opposed to one-to-many, you're able to do one-to-one. You're able to customize. So healthcare, education, etc. That ability to understand some students should move along quicker in certain domains, and in other areas they may need a little bit more time. And not, instead of kind of saying everybody needs to take 1 year to learn something, some people may be 6 months, some people may be 9, some may be a year and a half. That creates opportunity. So a lot of things. We're also going through a lot of trials at Anderson with Copilot, with Microsoft, on developing new syllabi for courses that we want to launch, on automated grading with the intervention of a TA and a professor. School operations, when we draft event announcements at the Easton Center. We use generative AI to do a first draft. So a lot of examples. Entertainment. People said, hey, listen, a lot of creative businesses, you can't use AI. You're really seeing a lot of use there. So music, artwork, literature, film production, gaming, a lot of the gaming companies. We just had last year the chief strategy officer of Electronic Arts who talked all about using AI and gaming to create a more customized experience. Next slide. Energy and sustainability. One of the things that happens with AI is it consumes lots of energy, lots and lots of energy in data centers. So there's a lot of work, number one, on renewable sources of energy. There's work that's going on chips that use less energy. And then there's a lot of work, just like supply chain management, on grid management. How do you manage energy supply and demand? And then agriculture. And this is another example, like education and healthcare, that fundamentally affects society. The world's population is growing faster than the arable land. The ability to drive up productivity, crop productivity, is not only an imperative, it's almost a humanitarian crisis. And so there are now many digital ag companies that are helping farmers understand soil conditions, moisture, fertilizer levels, the time to plant crops, what crops work well in what places to get the best outcomes. That's a huge area of AI. Next slide. So, what are the leadership implications on all of this? Number one is to say, where is there value creation? Where are the things you can do that create new products, new services, better performance of companies, et cetera? And where is this going to create a disruption? Where is it going to eliminate a company? That whole ability, when you think about robo-taxis and say, well, listen, if robo-taxis become very popular, price comes down, people adopt more, are they going to buy cars at the same rate they do now? And if the answer is no, then you think about robo-taxis in a downtown area. What's going to happen to the need for parking lots? You may not need as many parking lots, gas stations, etc. So there's a lot of chess game or domino effect that is important. Second point are business models. Thinking about, you've got a technology, how do I monetize this? How do I create money that creates value for an end user? And how do I do that so it creates value for a company? That's going to be important. Many of the areas of innovation are interdisciplinary. One of the great good fortunes we have at UCLA is we've got world-class graduate schools. Our engineering school, our medical school, our law school, a lot of the innovation that we have, and we have an innovation challenge at the Easton Center, which is a cross-campus effort, is a chance for our students to work with students in the engineering school and the medical school and the law school to come up with new product ideas. And again, it ties very well to what's happening in innovation. Competitive positioning. Companies that are winners in one generation are often not winners in another generation. I often tell my students the ultimate measure here is how long your shelf life can be of being especially relevant. Our imperative is to be agile with the environment that we're in. Keep learning about the use of technology. Think about what new products and services might come up, etc. Growing focus on technology and society. No great technology product is going to advance if it's harming society. There's got to be a balance when you think about product design, you think about the use of data, et cetera, that has to be adhered to. And then ultimately, there are big digital transformation efforts. Again, think about the three constituents. That has to happen at an individual basis of digital transformation. Learn about tech and AI. Learn, if you're at an enterprise, how do you digitally transform a company? And how does a society digitally transform? So lots of leadership implications here. Next slide. So one of the updated areas of strategy at Anderson was the development of the transformative leader model. If you say, hey, listen, what is the end measure of success of the MBA at Anderson? It's, do we turn out transformative leaders? And when you look at technology's got several key elements. I thanked our dean, Tony Bernardo, for making technology feel so prominent here. When you look on the left side, tech savvy. That ability to understand technology is a very important part of the Anderson MBA. If you go to the top right, to learn to be innovative. How do you create new product ideas, new service ideas, new business models, etc.? Can you do that and develop that skill while here? And then can you be driven and purposeful? Can you actually lead an organization, transform an organization, create the impact that you sought to do? So transformative leaders, again, is an overarching piece that I think is quite appropriate for what is going on in the world today. Next slide. So if you think about innovation and what are some of the areas of future innovation, saying, what does my mental software need to be? How do I need to think about problems? I give you several things to think about. Number one is always think about things in what I call the what if manner. Instead of saying, well, this is how education is today, or this is how retail is today, or manufacturing, ask yourself the what if. This is what Moderna did when they were starting the company. They said, what if we could come up with a highly efficacious COVID-19 vaccine in a record period of time, literally in 4 or 5 months? What would it take? How would we develop it? And how do we take away the borders and the boundaries that might exist? So always think about what is the future state? What do you want to get to? Knowing that there's going to be challenges, and then back into what you need to do. Next thing is think long-term and laterally about a lot of things. Have a view about the macro trends in the world. What is going on with the maturity of technology? What is going on with the future of work? How do you think about the geopolitical environment, etc.? Think about consumer trends. Consumers after COVID have shown they're much more digitally oriented. They're very comfortable doing telehealth visits. They're comfortable doing digital streaming and not going to a movie theater, etc. But think about customer trends, think about their pain points, and then what are the enablers that are required for success? And then I always tell my students, think about rate times volume when you're innovating, meaning rate is how much value per person. The biggest rate you could ever get is saving someone's life. But it may be a robo-taxi that's going to save you an hour and a half a day of commuting in Southern California. That's a great rate still. And then volume are the number of users. And if you could find high rate, high volume, you're often in an area where the total market is quite large. Identify discontinuities in technology and consumer preferences. COVID's been a good example on consumer preferences. AI, generative AI, has been a discontinuity in technology itself. And then think about where you're going to create value. And in all cases, be a dreamer. It's easy to find fault in things. It's much more difficult to say, this is the opportunity I see. Next slide. So let me just briefly tell you about the Easton Center, because you say, hey, listen, Kramer, I loved hearing all these great concepts, but tell me how it manifests itself at Anderson. Let me give you a few thoughts here. So next slide. So what are a variety of the initiatives? So we have a variety of courses that we offer that are related to technology. So technology management, I teach. It's a foundational course on tech strategy and innovation. We have an AI course that is all about the essentials of AI. How does it work? What are the use cases? How do you kind of do the how-tos in it? We have a leading with AI in operations. So when you go down into an organization, how is AI used in the recruitment activities of a company, the product development activities? How is it used in logistics and operations, etc.? We have a course that's taught there. We also have a leading in the AI era. So leading in the AI era is a course at the 30,000 foot level that says at the broad enterprise level, if you're a C-level there, how do you think about how AI is going to change? Are you going to lose your competitive positioning? Are you going to find that there's different ways of measuring success? How do you measure the value of data? The nature of investments that are required, are those changing, etc.? We also have 2 product management courses. These are all courses we've developed in the last 2 to 3 years. Product management in discovery. How do you come up with new products? And then how do you think about the delivery of those products? Once you know what the product is, how do you think about taking that to market? We also have a variety of courses that are sector oriented. So technology and healthcare, technology and media and entertainment. I teach the tech and society course. So how do you think about tech for good? And how do you think about minimizing tech's impact, negative impact on society? And then global immersion, that's a course that I teach also, where we take students abroad as part of their learning experience. In this case, it was China and Singapore, to say, how does technology look different? Next slide. Just a deep dive on some of those new courses to say that the people teaching these are people primarily from industry. And one of the benefits is they're thinking about what do they see at the companies they work at, whether it's Warner Music, whether it's Uber, whether it's Meta, etc. What is happening in those companies, and how do you need to think about problem solving and leadership there? They're all super talented, bright individuals that have dedicated a lot of time to us. Next slide. So the other thing, when you think about extracurricular activities at Anderson, there's a variety of them. We do two flagship conferences at the Easton Center. One is Tech and Society. It's offered on the last Friday of October. This last year, we had Sal Khan speak. So founder of the Khan Academy, the founder of Khan We had Wei Lo. She heads up autonomous vehicles at NVIDIA. NVIDIA is probably one of the most interesting AI companies that exist today. Was close to a $3 trillion market cap. Dee Dee Myers, she's Governor Newsom's head of economic development, and had a fascinating set of messages about it's possible to do good and do well, both of those things. So meaning you can have good outcomes for yourself, but you can help others around you. Great messages there. Next slide. We also have an Innovate conference, and that's in January, last Friday of January, and that's everything tech. So I mentioned Gail Carpenter, CFO of Amazon Stores, spoke. We had Marianne Patel. She's the SVP of Product Management at Salesforce, so she heads up Sales Cloud. David Sasaki heads analytics for OpenAI. Ganesh Shankar, who's actually one of our newest instructors. He's director of product management, oriented around safety at Google, and a couple of great moderators. And again, a lot of what they talked about is what AI is doing in terms of products and services. Next slide. So let me share a final thought for you here. It's the ideas about making the most of your MBA. To me, coming into a business school is like coming into a candy store. There's a million things that you could be doing: curricular, extracurricular, people that you're meeting, social activities, etc. If I were to give my own advice on it, it'd be several fold. Number one is to think big in everything that you do. It's very easy to be incremental and modest in what we look at. But if you could say, hey, listen, my aspiration is to be C-level at a large Fortune 500 company. How might I get there? What are the skills and experiences I need to have? But to think big about what you're doing. And when you manage teams, I actually find it's very motivational. Most employees want to be in an organization, in a team that has big aspirations. Second thing is context matters. It's very easy to kind of be in our own world and say, this is how the world works. This is what customers are going to want, etc. And every day that goes by in my ripe old age, I realize how big the world is. When we go to Asia, you see a whole different context on adoption, on the role of government, on the type of technology products that are there, etc. That ability to think about context matters. Ask yourself in every case, what does success look like? It's very easy to do what I call best efforts management. You just start working away, but somebody will say, what are you trying to achieve here? When will you know you've reached that top performance? You want to be able to be clear about what that is so that there's context and purpose and prioritization around, what you do. Be all in. being all in at business school and careers, generally the people that do well, I used to think, well, they're just super smart and they don't have to work quite as hard. Well, a lot of times they have to do a lot of things well. You got to be smart. You got to work hard. You've got to be really good with people. There's a lot of things. So be all in your journey. Develop mental software. That's a lot of what goes on at a business school. Your mental software about leadership, about innovation, etc., matters. And then the final thing is a philosophical one about the importance of serving others. We're fortunate to live where we are, when we're here, the families we have, whatever you feel has enabled you to have some opportunities. To me, it's important to take some portion of that good fortune and give back. And give back to communities, give back to classmates, give back to family, give back to the nation, give back to the planet. Whatever those things are, that's what has allowed our society to do well overall. And it's also one of the most satisfying parts I find of life, both personally and professionally. So let me stop with that. And Debbie, I'm going to turn it over to you for whatever questions are there.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, Professor Kramer. That was very thought-provoking and really amazing information that you shared with us all today. Christy's going to take us to the Q&A, and I think we already have a question from a participant. Christy.
Yes, and thank you, Terry. I just wanted to echo that. That was a great presentation. Definitely lots to think about. And we do have our first question here. I'm going to try to summarize it to make it a bit shorter, but this is a really interesting question. With advancements in AI, such as drones and advanced weapons, how do you think it could reshape the nature of combat, operations, and ethical decisions from those in leadership?
Yeah, fascinating area because this is an area that, if it's managed really well, can minimize the loss of human life. When you talk about drones and smart drones, it could completely change. It could create what we call big bang disruption, better performance because of the use of data and lower cost. So you don't have the cost of human life. So you have a huge amount of benefit, but you also have huge risk. So cyber attacks. And matter of fact, you look at a lot of the concerns when ChatGPT was developed, the concern was what is going to come out of ChatGPT on a search? If somebody wants to know how to develop anthrax, can they go online much more easily now? There's got to be guardrails and ways that you protect things that are quite proprietary and could create harm. The other angle on this is a global battle that goes on, right? Because, other nations are going to develop capabilities in this area as well. And to the extent at which those nations are not friendly to the United States creates a huge risk. What is the so what out of all this? It is, to me, my own view, absolutely imperative to advance the innovation. To hang back on it, to me, creates a much bigger risk. So thinking about what type of data do you need? What are you trying to achieve? How do you program it to the question you raised about ethical issues, about what are invariably very difficult issues? By the way, you have this even in autonomous vehicles. If you think there's going to be an impact necessary and it's a group of older people versus one young person, who do you hit? These are tough issues, but that's why getting the data and being precise about what you're trying to achieve is absolutely essential. So I think if it's managed well, it can create a safer nation with less loss of life, but it has a lot of imperatives to get it right.
Great. And so the next question is, are there plans for dedicated courses on ethical implications of AI, particularly with respect to the enterprise and society?
Yeah. So the course that I teach is one that's an elective tech and society that looks a lot at that. So it looks at AI as an example. We've done a couple of cases. One is in recruitment. How do you think about the ethical issues of allowing AI to make recommendations? And is there bias in the recommendations that get made. It's a fascinating case because in many of these situations, it's easy for us to get binary, to say tech is all good, get out of its way, or tech is the end of the world as we know it. The reality is most of these issues are more nuanced and complex in the middle. There are, as example, in recruitment, lots of bias that goes on, just human bias. So you don't want to kind of lock yourself into that. That's not very good. You want to make sure the machine is improving on those things. So tech and society would be an area that we would cover that. And then in the core curriculum, there are courses on leadership and what are the types of decision making that's required there? What information do you take? How do you think about the output of that decision making? So what's kind of the ultimate goal here is AI and technology should permeate every single thing we do at Anderson. This is part of a journey because we're just, kind of coming into AI, but eventually this should be something that exists in every single class we've got.
Thank you. And we have another question from Sarah. Creatives in the entertainment industry have set up protections around AI. Are you supportive of their moves away from AI to protect the creative process, or do you think it could help creatives?
Yeah, so I won't take a political stance because there's no way to win on that. What I will say is that blocking things in its entirety generally doesn't work for a variety of reasons. If the world were a static environment, it's a little bit like saying, well, we only care what goes on in the US. Well, we live in a big world and we compete with a variety of nations in a variety of areas. You've got to be high performing in the arena that you're at. So to say I'm going to not use something is not a good idea. Most of the applications that I've described are human in the loop ones. So the ideal outcome is to use the AI, get better at things. A lot of times, for those of you who use it, you'll see it gives you a reasonable base level that's kind of 20, 30, 40% of what you need. It is not 80, 90% of what you need. It takes the human to do that. And if managed well, the more complex tasks are going to get done by the human, which is more appealing work. I tell my students in my class, we have a team project at the very end of the term that allows them to kind of bring together all their thoughts and think about a brand new technology product that they'd want to make a case for. I said, you can use AI on that team project anywhere you want, but remember the water level is rising. So everybody else in that class is going to be using it as well. So you want to take that extra time, let it do the administrative work that you don't want to do. But the complex issues about will people adopt or not? How do companies deal with change? How do you think about the right timing? These are the complex issues that you want to deal with yourself. And so I think if it works well in media and entertainment, you'll have some really interesting opportunities to move to the most advanced part. And that to me should be the holy grail.
All right, thank you. I know we're almost wrapping up. We have a few minutes left, so maybe we have time for another question or two. So Rahul is asking, and this may be similar to the last question, but if you have any other insights, how do you envision the future of work, especially the collaboration of engineering and product teams? How do you envision the future of work evolving with AI and its long-term impact of future of jobs?
Yeah, so one of the latest thoughts, and like a lot of these things, it can either be super exciting or very, very scary. But the latest form of AI now is called agentic AI. So it's AI agents. And these AI agents, you can almost think of them as humans, but they're basically handling a specific task. They may be dealing a task in sales or marketing or software development, etc. And so the argument is over time, we need to learn as leaders how to manage AI agents. They're going to be working for us just like humans are going to be working with us. And so that ability to understand the technology and how you get better answers is going to be important. The second part is how you deal with your human colleagues is going to be very important because remember, again, a lot of the most complex stuff, the machine can't figure out that yet. So you've got to think about more is what are the unique customer needs that aren't being met? What is a unique construct of a product that may not be met? We had a visit, an alumni event in the Bay Area last year at Google's HQ, and the head of their core developer platform that has thousands of software developers was telling us that AI is improving productivity in software development, in original code generation, in basic quality checking, etc. It's helping. Now, she also said that the attitude towards work has gotten better because now a lot of the developers are doing more interesting stuff, but you got to get in the ring on it because to the point that Kareem Lakhani made earlier, AI won't take jobs, but people that use AI will take jobs from those that don't. So I think that'll be an environment. By the way, that McKinsey report I shared on the economic potential of generative AI, one of the biggest areas where AI is going to be used is actually in software development. Software development, marketing and sales was in there. Product management, some areas of product management. So a lot of white collar jobs. And so it is very important that we all get in and think about how we're going to use it.
So interesting. Thank you. Okay, so maybe a couple more questions. We have one from Rico, who is using a term I've never heard, but he or she is asking, are your views on the potential for, what are your views on the potential for pernicious AI and what sort of things are being done to prevent it?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of areas. I'll call it maybe more broadly misuse of AI. And misuse of AI can happen in a lot of areas. You can have bias in what is being generated. You can have a bias, a kind of bad purpose in something that's being created. If somebody wanted, like we have cyber attacks, wanted to affect broadly society itself, you'd have AI attack our utility networks, power, water. You'd have it affect the stock exchange. It would create a collapse in the market. There's a variety of areas where bad actors are going to get engaged in AI. We have a friend of ours that has developed several cybersecurity startups and has done it very well. And I asked him, I said, with AI now, are the good guys winning or the bad guys winning? So the good guys saying AI can be used to identify malicious behavior, malicious acts by AI, but you also have bad actors using AI to breach networks and create bad outcomes. And he basically said it's a duel. It's fighting back and forth. It is not a clear winner. And that's why there's so much focus on design of products, the type of data that's being used, the guardrails that exist. You know, can you execute on a kill switch? All those things are necessary.
Okay, thank you so much, Terry. As you can see, there's a lot of questions left, and we wish we could get to them all, but we do have to wrap up the session. It is already 7 o'clock, but this just kind of shows you how much interest there is in this topic, and this really is meant to be a little preview of what you could expect if you were to enroll in an MBA program at Anderson. This is just a tiny taste for what you could expect, the kind of conversations you could expect to have in the classroom. So thank you so much, Terry, for being here and sharing your insights and taking the time. Debbie, do you want to wrap up the session?
Yeah, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. And just as a reminder, we will send an email out after the event. We'll include the recording. So hopefully you can review and think about some of the things that you learned here tonight. Lots of thought-provoking information, we know. And other ways to connect with the admissions team will also be included. So please feel free to reach out to any of us on the admissions team. We'd be happy to answer all of your questions. And again, thank you so much, Professor Kramer, for being with us tonight. We really enjoyed the session and appreciate your time.
My pleasure. A pleasure to be with all of you.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you later.
Bye.